The crystalline spires of the Javar War Council chamber gleamed like frozen lightning against the void, their translucent walls offering a panoramic view of the Dominion's latest conquests. 3 burning worlds hung in the distance, former civilizations reduced to glowing embers, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment and their populations either enslaved or extinct. Supreme Commander Zyxthara stood before the tactical display, her chitinous exoskeleton catching the light from dying stars as she reviewed the intercepts with cold satisfaction. "Play it again," she commanded, her voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic crystals. The human transmission crackled to life once more, desperate, broken, pleading. A female voice, thick with what the Javar translator interpreted as grief, "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Command. We cannot stand against your forces. Our governments are willing to discuss terms of surrender. Please, we have civilians, children." The War Council members exchanged what passed for amusement among their species, a harmonious clicking of mandibles that filled the chamber like rainfall on glass. War analyst Kethvar, his carapace marked with the scars of a dozen conquered worlds, leaned forward with obvious anticipation. "These humans beg like wounded prey," Zyxthara mused, her 4 arms gesturing dismissively at the tactical display. "One final demonstration should suffice. Their pathetic species will join the others, either as slaves in our industrial complexes or as minerals fertilizing their own soil." She paused, savoring the moment. After 17 successful campaigns across the Outer Rim, after reducing entire star systems to vassalage, this small blue world would be just another stepping stone toward galactic dominion. The humans' primitive broadcasts have been intercepted for months now, their fragmented governments, their crude kinetic weapons, their desperate attempts to prepare defenses that wouldn't even scratch Dominion hull plating. "Prepare the fleet," Zyxthara ordered. 500 ships should be more than adequate for this pest control operation. Act 1, The Underestimation Scene 1, Javar Intelligence Briefing. The War Council chamber dimmed as Kethvar activated the holographic display, Earth's blue-green sphere rotating slowly in the center of the room. Red markers indicated population centers, yellow showed military installations, and green highlighted what the Javar had identified as industrial complexes. The planet looked deceptively peaceful, its white cloud swirls and continental boundaries unmarked by the defensive installations that protected truly advanced civilizations. "Earth's dominant species calls itself humanity," Kethvar began, his analytical voice carrying the dispassion of someone who had catalogued the doom of countless worlds. "They have achieved basic space flight but lack faster-than-light capability. Their military consists of fragmented national forces using primitive kinetic projectiles, what they term bullets and missiles. No energy shielding, no plasma weaponry, no unified planetary defense grid." The hologram zoomed in on major cities, New York, London, Beijing, each one pulsing with estimated population figures. Millions of beings going about their daily lives, unaware that their extinction had already been calculated and approved by beings they'd never met. Their largest military installation appears to be this NORAD complex, Kethvar continued, highlighting a mountain facility in the North American continent. Buried deep but accessible to orbital bombardment. Their space-based assets consist primarily of communication satellites and a few research stations, all of which our advanced scouts have already tagged for priority elimination. Zyxthara studied the data with the methodical attention that had made her the Dominion's most successful field commander. Unlike some of her peers who preferred the brute force approach, she believed in overwhelming preparation. Every species had their weaknesses, every world had its breaking point, and the key to efficient conquest was finding the exact pressure to apply. "What of their response to our presence?" she asked. "Our scouts have been operating in their system for 3 cycles. "Minimal," Kethvar replied with what might have been satisfaction. "Some increased military communications, civilian evacuation preparations in major cities, but nothing suggesting they understand the true scope of what approaches. Their leaders appear to be in denial, many are still debating whether our scout ships are of extraterrestrial origin." This drew more clicking from the council members. The psychological profiles were always the same: disbelief, panic, desperate attempts to negotiate, then collapse. Humanity would follow the pattern exactly. Yet something nagged at Zyxthera as she studied the intelligence reports. The data seemed almost too convenient, military installations exactly where logic suggested they should be, defense networks that followed predictable patterns, a population distribution that practically begged for orbital bombardment. In her experience, civilizations on the verge of space travel were usually more chaotic, more unpredictable. These population centers, she mused, gesturing at the largest red markers. They're remarkably exposed. No underground networks, no distributed command structures. The species appears to prioritize commerce and comfort over military preparation, Kethvar responded smoothly. A common failing among pre-contact civilizations. Zyxthera nodded, filing away her unease. Perhaps humanity's greatest weakness was simply that they had never faced a true existential threat. The Dominion would educate them, briefly. Scene 2, Earth's hidden preparation. 3,000 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Earth Defense Command's primary operations center, watching the same tactical displays that had fooled Javar reconnaissance for the better part of a year. The massive chamber hummed with barely contained energy, fusion reactors, quantum computers, and weapon systems that officially didn't exist, all operating in perfect, silent coordination. Status report, Chen requested, her voice carrying the kind of calm authority that came from 2 decades of military service and 5 years of knowing this moment would eventually arrive. All defense platforms report ready, replied Colonel Martinez, her tactical officer. The orbital rail networks are powered and locked onto the Javar fleet's projected entry vector. Stealth ships are in position. Ground-based installations are reading nominal across all continents. Chen nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. The Javar scouts had been detected the moment they entered the solar system, not by the primitive radar installations the aliens had observed and catalogued, but by gravitational sensors and quantum field detectors that humanity had developed in secret. Every probe mission, every reconnaissance pass, every intelligence-gathering operation had been carefully monitored and, when necessary, fed precisely the information Earth wanted them to have. The deception had been Chen's idea, born from her study of asymmetric warfare and refined through years of preparation. Let the enemy see weakness where strength existed, let them plan for a battle that would never happen, let them commit to tactics that assumed an opponent who didn't exist. Any word from our friends in the Javar Dominion? She asked with dry humor. The same transmission pattern, Martinez confirmed. Our intercepted communications suggest they're planning a standard intimidation approach, massive fleet deployment, demand for surrender, orbital bombardment of major cities if we refuse. They've allocated 500 ships, which their war planners consider overwhelming force. Chen's expression darkened. 500 ships represented nearly half the Dominion's active battle fleet, a force that had crushed 17 previous civilizations without meaningful resistance. The aliens' confidence wasn't entirely misplaced. If humanity had actually been the primitive species the Javar believed them to be, those ships would have been more than adequate to burn Earth to bedrock. But humanity wasn't primitive. They were patient. Personal log, Chen spoke quietly to her command recorder. My daughter would have been 23 today. The Javar killed her along with everyone else on Research Station Kepler when they destroyed our deep space observation post 2 years ago. They probably don't even remember it, just another minor obstacle cleared from their expansion path. She paused, studying the tactical display where green indicators showed the true extent of Earth's defenses. Weapon platforms disguised as industrial satellites, stealth cruisers hidden in the asteroid belt, ground installations that had been built to look like mining operations or communications arrays. Today, they learn that some obstacles bite back. Act 2, First Contact goes wrong. Scene 3, the Javar fleet arrives. The transition from hyperspace always carried a moment of disorientation, but Supreme Commander Zyxthera had experienced it enough times that she barely registered the sensation as reality reasserted itself around her flagship. Through the crystal viewports of the command vessel Inevitable Conquest, she watched as 500 Dominion warships materialized in perfect formation at the edge of Earth's solar system. The sight never failed to inspire her. Each vessel was a masterwork of Javar engineering, sleek predators with crystalline hulls that could channel and focus energy weapons, their surfaces etched with the victory marks of previous campaigns. The smallest destroyers massed more than any human military vessel, while her flagship alone carried enough firepower to crack a continent. "Fleet reports ready, Supreme Commander," announced her communications officer. "All ships have achieved optimal firing positions." Ziwexthara allowed herself a moment to savor the scene. Below them, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the void, beautiful, defenseless, and utterly unaware of what was about to unfold. Long-range sensors showed the expected panic, civilian ships fleeing the major population centers, military forces scrambling to establish defensive positions, and the pathetic human space stations broadcasting increasingly desperate pleas for communication. "Open a channel to the planet," she commanded. It's time they understood their situation. The transmission array powered up, sending Ziwexthara's image and voice across all human communication frequencies. She had refined this speech through 17 previous conquests, and the words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "People of Earth," she began, her translated voice reaching every radio, television, and internet connection on the planet simultaneously. "I am Supreme Commander Ziwexthara of the Javar Dominion. Your world now exists at our discretion." She gestured toward the viewports, where the assembled fleet waited in perfect formation. "You see before you 500 warships, each one capable of reducing your largest cities to molten glass. We have observed your civilization, catalogued your defenses, and found them adequate for primitives, but insufficient for survival." The human responses came immediately: fragmented communications from dozens of governments, pleas for negotiation, offers of surrender, threats that might have been amusing if they hadn't been so pathetic. Ziwexthara let them chatter for a few moments before continuing. "You have one choice: immediate, unconditional surrender of your species to serve the Dominion. You will abandon your weapons, submit your population for evaluation, and accept integration into our empire. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 17 previous civilizations chose compliance over extinction." She nodded to her weapons officer, and one of the destroyer-class vessels fired a single plasma bolt at an uninhabited asteroid in the outer system. The rock, roughly the size of a human city, simply ceased to exist in a flash of superheated light. "You have 6 of your hours to respond," Ziwexthara concluded. "Choose wisely." But as she closed the transmission, a nagging unease continued to plague her thoughts. The human response seemed almost scripted. Their military movements followed predictable patterns, their civilian evacuations proceeded with suspicious efficiency, and their leaders' surrender negotiations felt rehearsed rather than desperate. Something was wrong. Scene 4, the Trap Springs. Admiral Chen watched the Javar demonstration from her command center, noting the precise energy output and targeting systems of their weapons with professional interest. The destroyed asteroid had provided valuable intelligence about Dominion plasma technology, information that would be put to use very soon. "Javar Advance Guard is moving into the inner system," Colonel Martinez reported. 50 ships, destroyer and cruiser class, maintaining standard formation. "Right on schedule," Chen replied. "Signal all stations, condition Prometheus. Initiate on my mark." Across Earth's solar system, machinery that had waited years for this moment began to power up. What the Javar had identified as communication satellites suddenly revealed themselves as defensive platforms, their disguised hulls retracting to expose rail gun arrays and particle beam projectors. Mining operations in the asteroid belt went active, launching clouds of kinetic interceptors that had been manufactured and positioned over the past 5 years. Deep space monitoring stations shed their camouflage and began target acquisition sequences. "Advance Guard has reached the Moon's orbit," Martinez announced. "They're conducting detailed scans of Earth's surface." Chen smiled grimly. "Let them scan." What they would find were the targets humanity wanted them to find: the obvious military installations, the predictable defensive positions, the infrastructure that any conventional civilization would try to protect. They wouldn't detect the real defenses until it was far too late. "Now," she ordered quietly. The first indication that something had gone catastrophically wrong came when the lead Javar destroyer simply exploded. No warning, no incoming missile signature on their sensors. One moment the ship was conducting a routine scan of Earth's major cities, the next it was expanding debris field illuminated by the dying fires of its fusion reactor. On the inevitable Conquest, alarms began screaming as sensor operators struggled to understand what they were seeing. In the space of 30 seconds, 12 more ships in the advance guard met the same fate, torn apart by weapons that shouldn't have existed, fired from platforms that hadn't appeared on any reconnaissance sweep. Report. Zyxthra snarled, her 4 arms working frantically at command interfaces as the tactical display lit up with threat indicators. Unknown Weapons Systems, Supreme Commander, her tactical officer replied, his voice tight with confusion. Kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed, fired from concealed platforms throughout the system. Our shields they're not holding. The truth was even worse than that report suggested. The human weapons weren't just penetrating Javar shields, they were adapting to them. Each successive shot modified its approach based on the target's defensive response, learning and evolving in real time. It was technology that suggested a level of advancement the Dominion had completely failed to recognize. Impossible, Zyxthra breathed, watching as another cruiser died in a fountain of crystalline fragments. The intelligence reports were exactly what we wanted you to see, came a new voice over the communication channel. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main display, her expression calm and professional as explosions lit the space around Zyxthra's fleet. You made several assumptions about humanity, Chen continued conversationally, as if she weren't orchestrating the destruction of some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. You assumed we were primitive because we used kinetic weapons, not considering that we might prefer them for their simplicity and effectiveness. You assumed our fragmented governments meant weakness, not realizing we were unified where it mattered most. And you assumed our lack of faster-than-light travel meant technological inferiority. Another wave of railgun projectiles swept through the Javar advance guard, and this time Zyxthra could see them coming, streams of accelerated matter moving so fast they appeared as lines of light against the starfield. The truth is, Supreme Commander, we've been studying your technology for 5 years, ever since your scouts destroyed our deep space research station. We've been preparing for this exact moment, planning for this exact battle, and most importantly, learning from your previous conquests. Chen's image smiled with cold satisfaction. Welcome to Earth. Try not to die too quickly. Act 3, The Counterattack Scene 5, Earth's secret weapon. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of crystalline debris and cooling plasma, but Zyxthra's remaining forces still outnumbered the visible human defenses by more than 10 to 1. She had pulled back her fleet to regroup, analyze the new threat, and plan a response that would account for humanity's unexpected capabilities. Status report on the human weapons systems, she demanded. Orbital platforms using magnetic acceleration to fire projectiles at tremendous velocities, her tactical officer replied. Our shields can deflect them individually, but they're firing in coordinated volleys that overwhelm our defensive systems. The platforms themselves appear to be powered by fusion reactors and protected by some form of adaptive armor. Adaptive armor. That was disturbing. Technology that learned from incoming fire and adjusted its defensive properties accordingly suggested a level of artificial intelligence that the Dominion hadn't credited to humanity. We still maintain overwhelming numerical superiority, Zyxthra announced to her remaining captains. Coordinate our approach, overwhelm their defenses through sheer volume of fire. These platforms cannot. The tactical display erupted with new contact signatures as dozens of previously invisible ships suddenly appeared throughout the battle space. Sleek vessels that had somehow remained completely undetected despite being within weapons range of the entire Javar fleet. Stealth technology, breathed the tactical officer. They were here the entire time. Admiral Chen's flagship Retribution materialized less than 1,000 kilometers from the inevitable Conquest, close enough that Zyxthra could see the details of its construction through her viewports. It was a predator of a ship, all angles and weapon ports, built for one purpose and absolutely perfect for that role. Impressive, isn't it? Chen's voice came over the communication channel. 5 years of development based on your own cloaking systems. We found some interesting improvements. The human ships moved with a fluid coordination that spoke of extensive training and perfect communication systems. They didn't fight like the desperate defenders of a primitive world, they fought like experienced military professionals who had planned every move and prepared for every contingency. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Zyxthara's experience. Human vessels would appear from nowhere, deliver devastating attacks with weapons that seemed to pierce Javar's shields effortlessly, then vanish again before return fire could be coordinated. Their ships were smaller than Dominion vessels but faster and more maneuverable, and their weapons. How are they penetrating our shields? Zyxthara demanded as another of her cruisers died in a ball of superheated gas. The projectiles are learning, Supreme Commander, came the horrified reply. Each shot analyzes our shield frequency and modifies the next shot accordingly. They're using our own deflector technology against us. Chen had been right, humanity had been studying Javar technology, reverse engineering it, and improving upon it. The species the Dominion had dismissed as primitive had turned the tools of their would-be conquerors against them. Scene 6, Javar desperation. As her fleet continued to die around her, Zyxthara realized that conventional victory had become impossible. The humans had turned space combat into a deadly chess game, and they were several moves ahead at every turn. But the Dominion still possessed one overwhelming advantage: sheer destructive power. All ships, new targeting priority, she broadcast to her remaining forces. Concentrate orbital bombardment on Earth's population centers. If we cannot conquer this world, we will sterilize it. The order violated several Dominion protocols. Potential slave populations were valuable resources, and destroying them reduced the economic benefit of conquest, but Zyxthara's pride demanded that humanity pay for their defiance. No species could be allowed to defeat the Dominion and survive to tell others. Her remaining ships, nearly 300 vessels still capable of planetary bombardment, began charging their main weapon arrays. Plasma cannons designed to crack fortress worlds turned toward Earth's blue surface, targeting the major cities where billions of humans lived and worked and loved, unaware that their extinction had been ordered by an alien commander whose pride was worth more to her than their lives. Bombardment arrays at full charge, reported her weapons officer. Ready to commence sterilization protocol. But even as the words left his mouth, new alarms began screaming throughout the Javar fleet. The orbital defense platforms weren't just shooting at ships anymore, they were launching themselves. Dozens of the massive installations had detached from their hidden moorings and were accelerating directly toward the Dominion vessels, their fusion reactors overloading to provide both propulsion and explosive force. Ramming attack, someone screamed over the communication channels. They're using their own platforms as missiles. Zyxthara watched in horrified fascination as a platform the size of a city block slammed into one of her heavy cruisers at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion was visible from across the solar system, a brief new star that outshone everything except Sol itself. More platforms followed, turning the space around Earth into a storm of controlled fusion explosions. Human engineers had calculated the exact force needed to breach Dominion hulls, and they were delivering it with suicidal precision. Scene 7, Earth's final gambit. Through the chaos of battle, Admiral Chen's voice cut across all communication frequencies with the calm authority of someone who had already accepted what came next. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Protocol Leonidas. It's been an honor serving with you all. The surviving Earth defense ships suddenly abandoned all defensive maneuvers and began charging directly toward the Javar bombardment fleet. They moved with the terrible purpose of people who had accepted death but refused to face it passively. Aboard the Retribution, Chen watched her ships displays as they closed with the inevitable conquest. Her crew had volunteered for this mission knowing they wouldn't survive it, and their professionalism in the face of certain death filled her with a pride that almost offset the grief of losing them. Admiral, called her navigation officer, we're in optimal ramming position. Hull integrity is at 60% and falling. Maintain course, Chen ordered. Around them, other human vessels were making their own final approaches, each ship targeting a specific Javar vessel in a carefully coordinated sequence that would maximize damage to the Dominion's bombardment capability. The inevitable Conquest grew larger in their viewports, its crystalline hull scarred from battle but still magnificent in its alien beauty. Chen could see weapons ports swiveling to track her ship, plasma bolts reaching out to try and stop what was now inevitable. "This is for Station Kepler," she said quietly. "This is for my daughter. This is for everyone who ever died because you thought you were superior to them." The collision when it came felt almost gentle, two massive objects coming together in the silence of space, their momentum carrying them past the point where physics allowed any other outcome. Then the Retribution's fusion reactor breached containment, and Admiral Sarah Chen disappeared into the same kind of light that had once destroyed human research stations and alien asteroids alike. But in the seconds before the explosion claimed her, she saw something that filled her with savage satisfaction: the inevitable Conquest's main bombardment array going dark as primary power failed throughout the ship. Earth would survive another day. Throughout the solar system, similar sacrifices were being made as human crews traded their lives for the neutralization of Dominion bombardment capability. When the fires finally died, nearly two-thirds of Zyxthera's fleet was either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. In the command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Colonel Martinez watched the tactical displays with tears in his eyes as green indicators winked out one by one, each one representing friends and colleagues who had chosen to die rather than let humanity fall to alien conquest. "Signal from the Javar flagship," he reported to his senior staff. They're requesting terms of surrender." Act 4, The Reckoning Scene 8, Victory and Consequences. The interrogation chamber in Earth Defense Command's deepest bunker was a sterile place, white walls, harsh lighting, and a single table where the most successful military commander in Javar Dominion history sat with her four arms restrained and her chitinous armor scorched from the explosion that had crippled her flagship. Supreme Commander Zyxthera looked smaller than Admiral Chen had expected. Without the crystalline grandeur of her war council chamber and the fleet of 500 warships, she was just another alien prisoner trying to comprehend how her perfect plan had collapsed into absolute defeat. Chen herself bore the scars of her survival, burns across half her face from the fusion plasma that had breached her ship's hull in the final seconds before the Retribution's emergency transport had extracted her to a medical facility. The prosthetic arm that replaced the one she'd lost in the explosion moved with mechanical precision as she activated the recording system. "For the record," Chen began, her voice carrying new authority, "this is Admiral Sarah Chen, now Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, conducting the formal debriefing of captured Javar Supreme Commander Zyxthera. Date, October 15, 2387, 18 hours after the conclusion of what historians will probably call the Battle of Seoul." Zyxthera's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned was their equivalent of bitter laughter. "Supreme Commander. You humans appreciate irony." "We appreciate survival," Chen corrected. "Your Dominion made the mistake of believing that military technology determines military outcomes. We've learned differently." The tactical report spread across the table between them told the story in stark numbers. Of the 500 ships that had entered Earth's solar system with absolute confidence in their superiority, fewer than 150 had limped back to Dominion space. The remainder formed a debris field that would serve as a navigation hazard for decades and a monument to the dangers of underestimating apparently primitive species. "How long?" Zyxthera asked quietly. "How long were you planning this?" "Since the moment your scouts destroyed Research Station Kepler," Chen replied. 5 years, 4 months, and 16 days of preparation. Every piece of technology we could salvage, every tactical manual we could recover, every intelligence report we could intercept. We studied you the way you thought you were studying us." She gestured to the tactical display showing Earth's revealed defenses, orbital platforms that had masqueraded as industrial satellites, stealth ships that had been positioned years in advance, ground installations that had operated under false identities for the entire span of the preparation period. "The difference was that we knew we were being watched, and we knew exactly what you expected to see. So we showed it to you." Scene 9, The New Balance. 6 months later, Admiral Chen, now bearing the title of Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Initiative, stood in her new office overlooking the construction yards where humanity's first faster-than-light capable warships were taking shape. The vessels incorporated the best of both human and captured Javar technology, designed by engineers who had learned that sometimes the most primitive solution was also the most effective. The view from her window showed a changed world. The hidden installations were hidden no more, their fusion reactors powering expanded cities and their manufacturing capabilities producing goods for a species that no longer needed to pretend weakness. Earth's fragmented governments had unified under the simple recognition that survival required cooperation, and the planet that had once seemed helplessly divided now spoke with a single voice in galactic affairs. Daily Intelligence Summary, Supreme Commander, reported Colonel Martinez, now bearing the rank of Director of Galactic Intelligence. The Javar Dominion has formally requested a peace treaty. 3 of their former client species have declared independence and are requesting Earth's protection. And we've received first contact requests from 17 previously unknown civilizations. Chen nodded, studying the reports with the same professional attention she'd once devoted to planning humanity's desperate gambit for survival. The galaxy had noticed Earth's victory over the Dominion, and the political balance of power was shifting in ways that would take decades to fully understand. What's the status of our new fleet construction? The first squadron of Treaty-class heavy cruisers will be ready for space trials next month. The new orbital shipyards are ahead of schedule, and our reverse engineering teams have successfully integrated Javar shield technology with our adaptive armor systems. We'll have full production capability within the year. Through her window, Chen could see the lights of the construction yards working around the clock to build the ships that would carry humanity to the stars, not as conquerors like the Javar, but as protectors of the principle that military might should never again determine which species deserved to survive. Her personal communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Diplomatic Corps, the Altarian Federation, a collective of species that had successfully resisted Dominion expansion for over a century, was requesting a formal alliance with Earth. The attached files contained intelligence about other galactic powers, some aggressive, some peaceful, all now forced to recalculate their strategies in light of humanity's unexpected emergence. Chen smiled, remembering Zyxthara's words during their final interrogation session, "You have made enemies today, Admiral. The galaxy will not forget that a species like yours defeated the Dominion." "Good," Chen had replied. "We're counting on it." The communication system chimed again with a priority message from Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha, the replacement for Station Kepler, built in orbit around Jupiter and staffed by the children of those who had died in the original facility. The message was simple but profound: long-range sensors detect no hostile activity in Earth's defensive sphere. All approaches remain clear. Humanity is secure. Chen leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction as she considered how far humanity had come. From a species that had seemed primitive and defenseless to one that now stood as a recognized galactic power, all because they had understood one fundamental truth that their enemies had missed. The Javar Dominion's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating Earth's weapons, their technology, or their military capabilities. It was underestimating Earth's will to survive. In the depths of space, new ships bearing the insignia of the Terran Defense Initiative began their patrol routes, carrying with them the lesson that had cost the Dominion so dearly: sometimes the species that appears weakest is simply the one that has learned to hide its strength until the moment when strength matters most. And in the diplomatic quarters of the Earth Defense Command headquarters, representatives from dozens of species worked together to build something the galaxy had never seen before, an alliance based not on conquest or dominance, but on the radical idea that every civilization deserved the chance to determine its own destiny. The age of the Javar Dominion was ending. The age of humanity had begun.